This is the story of Sara Miller, a 29-year-old marketing specialist from Aurora, Colorado, who had recently moved into her first home. What started as an exciting new chapter in her life quickly spiraled into a nightmare that no one could have anticipated. Sara Miller had spent years saving up for her dream, a cozy, two-bedroom bungalow with a red door, nestled in a quiet neighborhood of Aurora, just a few miles outside Denver. The house wasn't perfect, it needed some work, and the basement gave her the creeps, but it was hers. She loved the little quirks of the place, the vintage brass door handles, the built-in bookshelves in the living room, and the wide attic space accessible by a pull-down ladder. The house had charm, history. She didn't mind living alone. After a rough breakup with her fiancé 6 months ago, she was eager for a fresh start. Aurora felt safe. Her street, Maplewood Drive, was lined with friendly neighbors who waved as they watered their lawns or walked their dogs. Sara settled into her new routine quickly. She commuted into Denver for work during the week, stopping at her favorite coffee shop, Bluebird Cafe, every morning for a caramel latte. Weekends were for her self-shopping at Sprouts Farmers Market, going for hikes at Cherry Creek State Park, or binge-watching crime dramas. Everything seemed perfect, for the first month anyway. The first thing Sara noticed was small, barely worth mentioning. One Friday evening, she came home from work, threw her keys on the kitchen counter, and noticed the fridge door slightly ajar. She frowned. That's weird. She always double-checked that the fridge was closed before leaving. It was one of her habits. But maybe she was rushing that morning. She shrugged it off, pressed the door shut, and moved on. A few days later, she noticed the bathroom cabinet slightly open. Inside, her neatly organized toiletries, face cream, mascara, and toothpaste had been rearranged. "Did I do that?" she muttered to herself, closing the cabinet and shaking off the feeling of unease. But as the days went on, the oddities piled up. Lights left on when she was sure she'd turned them off. A glass she hadn't used sitting in the sink. A faint smell, sweaty and sour, that she couldn't identify. One morning, as she pulled out of her driveway, she glanced back at the house and swore she saw movement behind one of the upstairs curtains. She stopped her car, rolled down the window, and stared. Nothing moved. "Get a grip, Sara," she muttered, driving off. By the second month, Sara couldn't ignore the feeling anymore. It wasn't just the oddities, it was the sense of being watched. One night, she was lying in bed, scrolling through her phone, when she swore she heard soft creaks coming from above her. "The attic?" she whispered, her stomach tightening. She'd only been up there once during the home inspection before she bought the house. It was mostly empty, just old insulation and a few discarded boxes. She convinced herself it was just the house settling. Old homes made noises, right? Still, she found herself double-checking the locks on her doors and windows every night. Sara's best friend, Megan, came over one weekend for wine and a movie night. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," Sara confessed, refilling Megan's glass. "Stuff keeps moving. Lights are on when I know I turned them off. It's like, I don't know, like someone's been in my house." Megan raised an eyebrow. "Sara, do you think someone's breaking in? Maybe a neighbor?" Sara shook her head. "There's no sign of forced entry. Nothing's missing. It's just weird." "Then set up cameras," Megan suggested. "Like those motion-activated ones. You can get them at Best Buy or order them on Amazon." The idea gave Sara a sense of control. The next day, she bought a set of security cameras and spent the afternoon setting them up, one in the living room, one in the hallway, and one aimed at the pull-down ladder to the attic. "If anything weird happens," she told herself, "I'll have proof." The first 2 nights, the cameras recorded nothing out of the ordinary. Sara felt a little silly checking the footage every morning, but it gave her peace of mind. On the third night, though, she found something. It was a Thursday morning when Sara sat down with her coffee and opened the camera app on her phone. She scrolled through the night's footage, her stomach tightening when she saw the timestamp, 3:14 a.m. The camera in the hallway had picked up motion. Her hand shook as she hit play. The footage showed the pulled-down attic ladder slowly unfolding. A pale, weary man descended, moving cautiously, as though he was used to being quiet. His clothes were filthy, his hair matted, and he carried a small flashlight in one hand. Sara froze, her coffee mug slipping from her grasp and shattering on the floor. The man was in her house. Her hands trembled as she dialed 911. "There's someone in my house," she whispered, her voice barely audible, as though he might hear her. The dispatcher stayed on the line until the police arrived. 2 officers swept the house, checking every room, every closet, every corner. When they reached the attic, they found evidence but no intruder. The attic smelled rancid, like unwashed clothes and spoiled food. In one corner, they found a sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, and a stolen kitchen knife. "He's been living here," one officer said, his voice grim. Sara felt like she was going to throw up. The police promised to patrol the neighborhood and encouraged Sara to stay somewhere else for a few nights. She packed a bag and went to stay with Megan. But 2 nights later, Sara's phone buzzed with a notification. Motion detected. Living room camera. She opened the app, her heart pounding, and saw him. The same man, standing in her living room, holding something in his hand. Her stomach dropped when she realized it was a framed photo of her. He stared at the photo for a long moment, then turned to face the camera. He smiled. Sara and Megan called the police immediately. By the time officers arrived, the man was gone again. They found the back door ajar and muddy footprints leading to the attic ladder. "This guy is dangerous," one officer warned. "We need to catch him before he does something worse." Sara refused to go back to the house. The police set up a stakeout, and 2 nights later, they caught him trying to sneak back in. His name was Elliot Grayson, a 34-year-old drifter with a long history of breaking and entering. Even after his arrest, Sara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She learned that Elliot had been living in her attic for over a month, using her things, eating her food, and watching her sleep. The scariest part, he'd been there before she even moved in. When the previous owner was questioned, they admitted hearing noises, but thought it was just raccoons. Sara sold the house a month later. Months after moving to a new apartment, Sara received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was the photograph Elliot had taken from her house.